How you been?
I'm good. I'm good. It was a good Christmas, good New Year's, even with getting sick. It was a good time. So
Good. Good. Get to see family and stuff.
I did. I went up to Salt Lake and got to spend it with my siblings, and my mom was there, and it was a lot. It was exactly what I needed.
Good. Good. I'm glad you got to spend some time with family. I think it's so important.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you for your patience while we got all that figured out. I'm new to this app that he knows so well, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of technology. He knows how to edit and do all of that stuff. I look at it and I'm like I freeze and I cry and
I know I'm not a fan of technology, and I usually get around it, and it just like implodes. It doesn't want to work anymore, and I'm like, I don't know how to fix it. So
so I'll just take it to the DI and start over.
yeah, that's so true.
Oh my gosh. So you're how many days sober? Are you at 90 days sober and you're
I am not. I'm only at 4 sober now.
okay. Okay.
I drank at New Year's.
Okay.
On New Year's. I don't know why. It was so dumb. And I had a beer and then I was like, why did I do this?
Ah.
Why did I do that? But um yeah, I had 1.5 beers and then I was like, this was so dumb. For what? Especially because I was home alone. So,
Was it like conscious or unconscious? Was it just kind of like you just went and grabbed a beer?
mhm.
Uh-huh.
I just was home alone. I was supposed to work. I went into work and I got coughing, even though I got cleared and said the doctor said I was okay to go to work. I got there and I got coughing and they were like, no, we don't want you here.
Mhm.
Please go home.
Mhm.
And I had to stop and get gas. And everybody in line had beers. And I didn't even really think about it. I just went and grabbed a tall boy and I'm in line. I got home and I was like, why did I do that? Then I was like, I'm just gonna save that for cooking because I like to, like potatoes or whatever. And I was like, I can cook with it. And then later in the night, I just opened it and I was drinking it. I'm like I mean, I the whole time it sat there, I was like, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes. I'm like, it's just a beer. What's a beer
Mm.
gonna? And then afterwards, I'm like, that was so dumb. I didn't
Mhm.
even enjoy it. It didn't taste good.
Mhm.
Why would I do that? But alcohol, even though it's not my drug of choice, it's not my anything of choice, it's sociably acceptable.
Mhm.
And it makes it so much harder to just walk away from. Like, you know what I mean? Like meth or heroin and all those other things, you got to go be scandalous and hide and, get that stuff where I'm literally just standing in line at the gas station and there's all these, beer everywhere and I'm just like, okay, no problem.
Mhm.
So,
Easy.
starting out the new year over again.
Do you feel like you're
But
starting over again?
no, not
Okay.
over again. No, because I don't even know if like all the justifying in my head, like, oh, it was just a beer, or like, oh, I didn't get drunk. It's not even any of that. I'm not in the same place emotionally, like that I was when I was drinking before.
Mm.
Like, just if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
I So no, I don't feel like I'm starting over, but also starting over if that makes like
So, here's how I look at like lapses and relapses. You're getting on the freeway, okay? And this is early recovery and you're super excited about everything, maybe, I don't know, sometimes. You're super excited about everything. You say,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, I'm totally going to do this." And then you go to get on the freeway and you check your your rear view mirror, you check your mirrors and everything, and you look over your shoulder, okay, and there's a car coming up, and he's coming up super fast, and you didn't see him, and he's maybe weaving in and out of traffic, and just as you go to change lanes, you don't check your rear view again, right? You don't check your blind spot again, and you change lanes, and that car pits you and just kind of sends you out of control. And I look at that like with lapses and relapses, like we're in that pace lane and we're getting ready to merge on, and something happens where we missed a blind spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this, what do you think your blind spot was?
This is so, I feel awful saying this because I love my family. This is my family. Going up to Salt Lake for Christmas, everybody drinks. All, like my sisters work at a brewery. My brother-in-law just got best bartender at one of the bars up there. It was hard to not go up there and be surrounded by all of that and stay sober. Like because it was just, and like my one sister, she can drink. It's not an issue for her. The rest of us, it is. The one, it's not. And I think there's a little part of me that's jealous that I can't just pick it up and drink when I want and not when I don't want to. It's not how it is for me.
It's not the relationship that you have with it.
Yeah, as much as I love my siblings with my whole heart, it's a trigger to be around family. So
yeah, did you know that before?
I did. I knew it was going to be tough. I knew, and like my husband and I, we talked about it and we were like, no, we're going to be good. It's going to be okay. And then, but I also wanted to go see them where they were, support them. And I was like, I'll be okay. I can go to Red Rock Brewery and it's going to be fine. I can go and not have a beer. And then when I got in there, I was like, I want a beer. So we drank, well, I had a beer at out to eat. And then I went to go see my brother-in-law. And so we had a beer. And then I had the one at New Year's. And then I'm like, why are we doing this? Or not we, me. Why am I doing this? Like, it wasn't even for the social. Nobody said anything. It was all me. In fact, when I did order a beer, they're like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, good.
Good.
And it's not like it didn't down spin me in any way. Like, I don't feel like, oh, you're a piece of crap because you did that. Like, I'm just like, man, I was doing really well. And I still am doing well. I'm not, but I'm like, it was just a silly reason. And I think more of it's built up in my head about like, oh, it's Salt Lake. That's what we do in Salt Lake. No, it doesn't have to be what we do. But it's just been what we have done for so long. So yeah. So I'm starting the new year over because I would like to go a whole year. I want to see what that's like, at least. I know for so many people, alcohol is not an issue, which lucky for them. But for me, I've got an addictive personality. Anything I can get my hands on. I'm just like, even food, soda, you know what I mean? Like, I will get on a hyperfixation food and I will eat it over and over and over and over and over again until I'm absolutely sick of it. Like, it just, everything in my life, I'm either full, like, let's go, or none at all. I don't have like an in between.
There's no limiting yourself. There's no knowing your limits.
No, I mean, yes, I had one and I'm like, I'm good. Let me have a water. So like, I can know how to say no, but I also, the fact that I don't know how to tell myself completely no in some situations, like, it's just wild because I'm like, alcohol, like I said, is not my drug of choice. So to me, I'm like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm not using meth. I'm not out there on the corner doing what I need to do to get a fix, so I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
But really, at the end of the day, it's all kind of the same thing for me.
For you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that really highlights the like how you have to challenge your belief system and how you have to look at how everything changes when you go into recovery and sobriety, and not just early sobriety, like the entire time. You have to be mindfully aware of every move you make. And that's not always an easy task. And you go into that, I just want to be normal. I just want to be able to
Mhm.
have a beer and for it
Mhm.
to not to be a problem. I want to be able to walk past certain places and not be triggered into having an urge or a craving. I want to be able to do that. And I think we take for granted being able to do things without having that possibility,
Yeah.
right? But for somebody in recovery, they have to be mindfully aware of how they're having a relationship with literally anything, because if you've used a substance to cope with something, it becomes that much easier to go back to that substance.
It was so easy. It was really, like at the brewery, like it was a no-brainer. Like we're at a brewery, you have a beer. That's what everybody does. I'm at the gas station, everybody in line has a beer because it's New Year's. Like it's just that's what everybody does. I just want to be normal. I just like but that's not it's not how it is for addicts. We can't we're not normal. And it's not that we're unnormal. It's just not we're wired a little different. And that's okay. But learning to figure out that line and really telling myself that just because I don't have a needle in my arm doesn't mean it's any less of a problem for me. Because I've used that as a for so many years, like, well, I'm not using meth, I'm okay. I'm not on heroin, I'm okay. Even though I was drinking, was drinking a half gallon of whiskey a day. But I'm not using, so I'm okay. No, that's still not okay. And that's been a harder lesson for me to learn and really grasp and hold on to than any of my other lessons or things that I've gone through is my relationship with alcohol and how much it actually affects me. Because with meth and heroin, it's easy to see all the ways that it's terrible for you and how it was absolutely destroying my life. Where alcohol, I have been able to downplay or um, minimize all the things that came with my alcoholism. Like I even debated whether or not like doing this podcast with you because I was like, oh, I relapsed. I drank. I shouldn't. I have no right telling anybody how to get better when I don't know what I'm doing. But at the same time, like this is just real life. This is to to sit and tell anybody like, oh, you're gonna get clean and be perfect forever. That's not real life either. Like, is that the dream? Sure. Do we stumble? Absolutely. And I'm here to say, like, yeah, I know that I messed up, but that's not the end. I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep moving forward. So here's that first step moving forward.
Right. And now that you saw that blind spot, right, you can, moving forward, I mean, you knew my
Yeah.
family, I'm going to be with family and working in addiction recovery. That's one of the major things over the holidays is we really kind of like amp up therapy and groups and processing and everything, because going to be around family, there's so many different dynamics and so many different things going on. And if you're newly in recovery, that can be highly triggering. Even if you're not newly in recovery, I think all those different dynamics and the expectations and if there's shame and guilt, whatever it is, right? You're gonna be triggered. You're gonna have urges. You're gonna have cravings. You're gonna have you're gonna kind of lean into wanting to fit in.
Yeah.
right? And just be normal. Just have a beer with everybody else and show everybody, look, I'm okay. I can do this. Show yourself, look, I'm okay. I can totally do this. But that's a
Mhm.
slippery slope. And lapse and relapse. I mean, there was a lapse. And you said, you know what? That's not going to be the end of it. That's not the end of the story. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
blind spot and now I see what's in that blind spot. And I know when I go to change lanes, right? Going to see
Yeah.
family. When I go to change lanes, I'm going to Vegas. When I go to change lanes, I'm going to, I'm traveling here, I'm traveling there. Go to change lanes. I, meet new friends and they party or whatever. Those are lane changes. And then that's where we can kind of, okay, where's my blind spot? Is
Yeah.
there a car coming up to is there anything coming up on either side that I'm not catching? Am
Right.
I am I justifying? Am I minimizing? Am I leaning into old behaviors, old patterns and checking in with yourself? How am I feeling? Am I feeling like I'm kind of blocking things out? I'm ignoring stuff. I'm not letting myself feel my emotions.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you really highlighted all that because I think it's really important and I'm so honored that you still wanted to come today because that's not an easy thing to do to come in and say, yeah, I lapsed. And I'm so
Um,
proud of you.
well, thank you. It's hard. The last thing I want to say, especially to be on the interwebs forever, is that my family is a blind spot for me. I love my family and they love me and they are so supportive. So to be like, I was so triggered going to see family was a hard spot. Like, I don't want to say that, but it's the truth.
Hmm.
As much as I love them and as much as they love me, you're 1000% right. The expectations, the path, the all of it that's rolled up together, and and then the holidays.
Hmm.
It was just a lot, and I told myself like, oh, I've got so many years being clean, 5+ years being clean from my drug of choice. Like I can take that experience and just like I'll be okay. But no, this is like it's still a whole process, and I'm just thankful to be here, and that mistake didn't snowball into so many other, because it could have so easily, you know what I mean? Like it could have so easily turned into so much more, and I'm thankful that I'm here today. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad. So let's go into that story of how addiction found you, your kind of your journey into it, and then out of it.
okay. Um so for me, I was just the a good little Utah Mormon girl until I was 15. I Piss was a bad word to me. Like which by the way, if I swear, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's
Totally fine.
edited out. I've got a mouth like a sailor, but so at 15, I'm just this good little girl, and I found out the real reason my parents got divorced. I didn't know what it was, and I was so mad at my dad. So mad at him after I found out, just all the dirty details. This man that I had on a pedestal, I was like, wait, that's what happened? Like you chose to leave us for somebody else? Like within a week, I had had sex, I had smoked weed, and I had drank. Because all the things that he was like, is this little Mormon family, they were like, do not do. I was like, watch me, thinking that it was going to hurt him, when in reality that was all me. That just hurt me. Um, and it was a blast. I had so much fun. I mean, I've been boy crazy from the womb. So adding alcohol in there and going to parties, and I became the life of the party. Everybody loved hanging out with me. I was so much fun, and that became just as addicting as all the rest of it. I graduated early, I got kicked off my high school basketball team because I got an alcohol ticket.
Mm.
I was the student body president. I was captain of the basketball team, and I got kicked off all of that when I got an alcohol ticket. And so I left high school early, and I moved down to St. George. And my first little boyfriend that I found, we were talking one night, and he was like, "Well, I used to like dabble with meth," and I was like, "Well, what's that?" I had never heard of it. I had no concept of
Mhm.
what it was. And he was like, "Oh, um, he's like, it just makes you want to stay up all day and you're ready to party." And I was like, "Well, hell yeah, I'm ready to party. Like, let's go."
Mhm.
And we went over to some house. I look back now and I'm like, the red flags just were popping off everywhere.
Mhm.
But I was just so wanted to be accepted by everybody that I pushed all that away. And that first night that I got high, when they say it can happen the first time, it absolutely can.
Mhm.
The the feeling, I was like Superman. I could do anything I wanted. We had the best time. We went on adventures, and it was just like me and him, we went off. Like I was like within weeks I was smoking meth every single day.
Mhm.
And um within 6 months I'd lost my job, my first job, from like cuz I was too high to function. I was a cashier at Kmart, and I hadn't slept for weeks. I mean, you sleep a little bit here and there when you nod off, but I hadn't intentionally gone to bed for weeks.
Mhm.
And I look back at pictures and I thought I was so cute, like I was always dressed up. And I look back at pictures now and I'm like, girl, what were you thinking? Um, but I just was, yeah, just the high of, well, here's another. Okay, so when I was out partying, all the guys that I would hang out with, they were like, "Oh, you're so much funner than all the other girls because you don't just sit and talk." Because the higher I got, the quieter I got. I would just sit there and just watch everybody. So they would cart me around with them everywhere. And I very quickly became involved with people that were actually cooking.
Oh no.
This little teeny country bumpkin had no idea. Like I had lived such a sheltered life, was all of a sudden mixed up with these people here in St. George that were some of the largest distributors in St. George. Like, I don't even know how that happened. And I just remember one day looking around and I was like, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
But they were giving me drugs for free. All I had to do was just drive them around. And I was like, no problem. I'd never been in trouble. So to me, I was untouchable. And that was just as addictive as the drug.
Mhm.
That I was like, well, I don't, anyway,
Important.
yeah, I felt important. I felt wanted. I felt needed. I
Mhm.
at this point, my parents had been divorced for a while. My dad had his whole new little life. My mom was remarried and they had their little life. And I didn't really fit in anywhere. I'd been kicked out of my dad's house. I'd been kicked out of my mom's house. I'd been kicked out of my dad's house again, all before I even graduated high school. So I didn't feel like I had anything that was mine or that where I belonged. So to have this group of strangers like tell me how amazing I was and how they wanted me around, I was like, okay, here I am.
So at this time, did your parents know that you were using meth?
No,
Mm.
no idea. I disappeared. I mean, I would pop back in here and there. And I remember at one point, so I'm like a year in. I had stolen my mom's Chevron gas credit card. I drove a little Saturn that I could get from St. George to Salt Lake on one tank of gas. And in 1 month, I put like $380 on her gas card just from driving back and forth. And she was obviously so mad. She was like, "What is going on?" Because I'd never stolen anything, she's like, "What is going on?" And I was like, looking at her, and am picked to death. I'd picked like, just my arms, my face. I had like, like the typical tweaker face, like where I just picked myself to death. And I'm looking at her, and she's like, "What is going on with you?" And I'm like, "Look at me, Mom," like almost begging her to like say something. Like, I didn't know how to come out and be like, "Mom, I'm doing drugs." Like I had no idea how to have that conversation or how to bring that up. Even though at that point, like I knew I was in trouble. I knew that I was addicted, and I knew that I was headed down a path, but I had no idea how to say anything. And she yelled at me, and I apologized, and I'm sure I had to do something to like make up for it, though I don't remember what that was at the time. But then I just disappeared again. I packed my stuff and I moved to Richfield. And then I met more boys that brought me more trouble. And I would still eat every day. I was still going. At this point, I'd figured out a balance. A balance. I knew just how much I could do every day, that I could still sleep for a couple hours every night. I would still sleep. So for 10 years, I lived relatively normal without anybody really knowing. And then when that ex and I started using together, then everything went to hell. You just implode. You can't be in a relationship and use with somebody. It doesn't work. Things got really, really bad. And then I packed up one night in the middle. Well, he left for work on a Monday. I packed my things in a Jeep and moved to Salt Lake with a friend. He said, "Come move in with me." And I was like, okay. Got up there. And then I was in a place where nobody knew me. I couldn't just be like standing on the side of the road and have people drive by that knew me, because Richfield was relatively close from where I grew up. So I knew a ton of people there. St. George, my mom had been almost my whole life. So I knew a ton of people there. Everywhere I went in St. George, Richfield, I knew people. I couldn't go to Walmart without people knowing me or knowing my family. So it kept me a little bit in check, a little bit. When I went to Salt Lake and nobody knew me, woof, I went off the rails. I was going out to bars every night. I was doing any kind of drug I could get my hands on, and lived like that, and was working in bars, bartending, and then I met another boyfriend that I had gotten hurt at work, and some girl was like, "Hey, try this," and gave me an Oxy 30. And I was like, "That was awesome. What was that? Like, can I have more of those?" And she's like, "No problem." Within 2 months, I was spending $250 a day on pain pills. Like, I went so hard. And then this boyfriend was like, "Well, you know what would save you money? Have you ever tried heroin?" And I was like, "Well, if that's going to save me money, sure, let's go do that."
You didn't know what
And,
heroin was?
huh?
You didn't know what heroin was?
I mean, I knew, but at this point, I didn't care. I just, as long as I had that, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, "Oh, I've been doing meth. I'm hardcore." Like, I think back to some of the things I told myself and the way I rationalized it, and I'm just, I don't understand how I thought it was okay. But I was like, "Oh, if I can save money, only spend $50 instead of $250, on drugs today? Hell yeah, let's go.
Mm.
So we drove downtown. He taught me how to like walk down Main Street or down, you know, downtown Salt Lake and to get heroin from a stranger, and went on that journey for a while. And I remember one day I was so sick, so sick. And my sister called, I guess some point in the middle of all this. I mean, I was still using meth, but I was using heroin too. So we used meth to get me up and get me to work, and then I'd come home and do a bunch of heroin to get me to fall asleep.
Mm.
Both of my brothers had come home from Mormon missions in this time, which I'm not even sure which year it was. It's all just kind of a blur. Um, but apparently, when my brother Dylan came home from his mission, I was like nodding out at the airport, at the family dinner. I honestly don't even remember being there. I don't remember. I remember being at the airport. Same with my brother Benjamin. He came home like a couple weeks earlier. I remember being at the airport, but I don't remember talking to anybody. I
Mm-hmm.
remember going into the bathroom at the airport to do more drugs because heaven forbid I go more than 20 minutes without getting high.
Mm.
So it was after my brother Dylan came home, I guess, like I said, the family dinner, and I was a mess. And my sister that I had lived with for a little while, with her and her kids, which I adored with my whole soul, she called me and said, "Here's the deal. If you ever want to see your niece and nephew again, you're going to go to rehab." And I was like, "No."
Oh.
She's like, yes, you are." She's like, "You are going to get help or you will never, ever see them again." And I was like, "Okay, where do we go? What do I need to do?"
That was it.
Nothing to that point had changed my mind.
What are the things
I
that
mean,
you're that when everybody, when was it that your family realized that Chanley's got a problem?
it was when I was living in Richfield.
Uh-huh.
In fact, some point in there, they did send me to rehab.
Mm.
Um, because I was on drug court because I'd gotten in trouble with the system, and I wouldn't stop drinking. I kept getting caught by all the cops in Richfield drinking every weekend. Um, and so it got to the point where it was like, "Hey, you've gotten caught a few times. You've got drugs in your system again when you're supposed to be on drug court and not supposed to have anything. So you either have to go to jail for, I think it was like 6 months, or you have to go to rehab."
Mm.
So I was like, "Okay, rehab."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be there. There was a kid that was getting drugs thrown in over the fence to the rehab while I was there. So I was getting high the whole time I was in rehab,
Mm.
but I knew how to hide it. Nobody knew. Like, I was really good at acting normal. And so nobody knew. The
Mm-hmm.
day of my graduation, I got high and I sat there and was like, "Thank you for supporting me. I'm so good. I'm so healthy. Look at me go." And everybody's like, "We're just so proud of you." The whole time I was high.
Mm. What was it like to have everybody tell you how proud they were and
Honestly, I don't really remember. I just remember, I remember thinking, if you only knew me, you
uh,
wouldn't be proud. But you don't know me.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I just was like, the only reason you care is because it looked bad to your friends and
Oh.
the family. But you don't really care what happens to me.
Mm.
You're
That's how
just,
you justified it.
mhm.
Uh-huh. They don't really care about
And
me.
no.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm just this embarrassment. And like, oh, I'm your story that you get to tell everybody, like, don't do that, or you'll end up like Chanley. Don't do drugs, or you'll, like, be the hot mess that Chanley was. And I was just like, whatever, that's just me.
Mm. When did you decide to take on that persona?
I don't know. It just, I don't know why I never thought that I believed that I deserved more. I just was like, this is just who I am. I I remember when I was younger, just being like told, like, when they'd put me into therapy, because I was a sad little girl. My parents got divorced. There were, I was just, I've always felt it all.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be like, well, we're going to figure out what's wrong with you.
Mm.
Let's get you into therapy. Well, nothing was wrong with me. And I see that now. And it took a lot of therapy to get me to this point. But there was nothing wrong. I was just a sad little girl that didn't. And, my family did the best they could. I see that now. Like, nobody in my family knows how to process emotion or how to have hard conversations. We
Mm.
kind of we'll have a little bit of a conversation, then we just brush it under the rug and we move on.
Mm-hmm.
When I needed more than that, but I had no idea how to ask for that. I had no idea how to voice what I wanted or what I needed or even what was wrong. I didn't know. I mean, at 15, I had started drinking. It was the only way to hide all those feelings. To cover it up was the only kind of coping I knew. So to just take on that persona of I'm just the mess up, I'm the black sheep, was easier than accepting where I was. I think maybe I don't. I am in such a different place now than even back then. I sometimes to like try and think back of like what my thought process was. I'm like I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know. I just know that I was a really sad and lonely person. I didn't let anybody in to really know what was going on with me. Um but so when my sister was like when she had said like we're done. You're going to rehab. I was like, okay. That time at this point I was like I knew that I was in way over my head. I knew that I was in serious trouble and that like there was no way I was getting out of this on my own. Like I remember at one point I was walking home from work. I was um coming off of heroin so hard that the body aches was just so sick. And I stood with my toes over the edge of a curb and it's on this really busy street in Salt Lake. I can't remember which street it was, but I just sat there and I really thought about throwing myself into traffic because I was like, I can't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea how to ask for help. I have no idea how to get off this, but I can't keep living like this. Like I can't do this. So when she was like, "You're going," I was like, "Okay." I knew that I needed it. So they brought me back down to St. George and put me in a detox hospital down here. Because on top of doing meth and heroin, which you feel like you're going to die coming off of, but you won't, I was also doing so much Xanax. Um, and I was drinking the whole time too. And so my mom was like, had talked to a doctor and they were like, no, she could die from coming off of all this. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to put her into a thing. So they put me into a detox hospital and then from there, I went straight to a rehab in Cedar and was doing really well. I was working my program. I was really putting my everything into it. And there was one day in one of the groups, not the teacher, the counselor, whoever it was, she called me out on having rage issues. She was like, we really need to talk about this. And I was like, fuck you. I don't have rage issues. Like, packed my bags and walked out that day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, we're not doing that. I don't have that. I'll work on what I have, but I'm not going to work on what, just, I
There it
definitely,
was.
I definitely have rage issues.
There it was. Yeah.
And it hit this just
Mm-hmm.
but I had always been told I was such a happy, loving person. But really, I definitely had this underlining that was I was angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry at my parents. I was angry. I was angry at everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I refused to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Would not touch that. Um, so I came home. I moved in with my grandparents, and within a week of getting out of that rehab, I was using again. Um, and I went down to Vegas with a friend to go get drugs, get more drugs. We were coming home and we got pulled over and I got arrested in Mesquite. And luckily I didn't have anything on me, but they did. But I still got arrested and most of my family found out. So when I got home, my mom was like, "You have to move out of grandma and grandpa's house. Like, we're done. We can't keep doing this." Which at the time I was like, I knew it because you don't really love me. Not like, hey, you keep walking over every single boundary that we set. And, you got grandpa's truck impounded, which you took out of the city, which you weren't even supposed to be driving, but you drove it to the city and then got arrested. Like, come on. Of course you're going to have. But I was just like, oh, you don't really love me? Okay. And I went hard. I went so hard and then was lost all my jobs. I was homeless. Living I and I was this is so crazy. I'm like, oh, if I'm gonna be homeless anywhere, at least I'm in St. George. It's good weather. Like that's what I used to tell myself as I would be sitting at the park trying to get high without anybody noticing. I was like, well, at least I'm in St. George. I again, my thought process around everything I did, it just makes no sense.
Well, it
Um,
couldn't. It couldn't. You couldn't be sensical.
no.
Yeah.
Um, that is when I met Jeremy, my husband. And he was going through a gnarly divorce. And we went hard together for a couple of years. Finally, his mom called and was like, listen, we want you guys safe. Will you please come here? So we moved in with her and tried really hard to get clean on our own. We, like erased numbers, got off Facebook, did all the things. But I would have literally people like call me and be like, hey, I just put some shit in your mailbox. Go get it before somebody finds it. Because I hadn't called them, in a month to get drugs. Like we literally could not get away from it. And at this point, our relationship was so volatile. Like we were wrestling over guns to commit suicide at least once a month. We were like, how we never hurt anybody or ourselves, because like we'd be in the car fighting and I would like pull the wheel to just like throw us into a tree or like to hoping that we would roll and die. Like I was so done with life. I didn't care who I hurt and who I took out with me. I just wanted to be done. And finally, Jeremy looked at me one day and he was like, I can't do this. Like, what do we do? And we cried and cried. And it was like the next day, maybe it wasn't the next day, but he got a job offer in Montana. And I was like, let's go. Let's go where we don't know a soul. And let's get out of here. So we got really, really high, packed all of our stuff, and drove to Montana and finally decided that was it. We were done. And I just went up there with the whole thought process of like, nobody up here is going to know my backstory. Not like everybody in St. George did. Not like everybody in Richfield did. Not like even people in Salt Lake did. Like nobody knew who I was. So I could go up there and try to live a normal life, which was hard because that first year of getting clean, I held on by my fingertips. I think I slept and cried and ate. That was all I did that first year.
Mm-hmm.
Just barely holding on. I hated going to meetings. I didn't like talking to people about it. I wanted to just be so far the other way from what everybody did. Like normal, how everybody else got clean. I didn't want anything to do with that. Um, and then I listened to a podcast about microdosing mushrooms and how it could help change your brain chemistry. And I was like, well, that's what I need, like kind of joking. And I was like, well, if it's meant for me, I'll find it. And it was a whole year later, which at this point, like, yes, I was clean. I'd been clean for 2 years, but I wasn't, what's the word? I wasn't thriving. I was just going through the motions. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we moved back to St. George, which was scary because I was like, oh crap, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to know everybody again. But I was like, no, I'm ready to be clean. Anyways, we moved down to St. George, and then I met somebody that had access to mushrooms, and they were microdosing. So they would do like the psilocybin mushrooms and like lion's mane, reishi, like all these other mushrooms, and they had them in these little capsules. And he was like, just try it, um, and tell me what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my whole world. That first time I cried and 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 felt like I'd released a bunch of stuff that I didn't realize at the time that I was still carrying around with me. Because I was like, oh, I'm clean, I'm healthy, I'm better. Like, no, you still didn't. I still hadn't touched anything that actually caused the addiction, which was just trauma. It was sadness that I was carrying around that I refused to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And microdosing actually finally forced me to open it up and look at all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Helped me look at it in a different way. When all those studies that are out there about how psilocybin will help with PTSD, with, literally, so like with meth, when you use meth, you break off like your brain synapses or whatever. I know there's more technical terms for it, but I don't. But doing mushrooms in like a therapeutic session, which I would, do with, I have a friend down here that she has an office. And so we would go, I would take them, we would talk it out. And it helped me process through so many emotions that I didn't realize that I was still carrying on to. And for the first time, and this is 3 years now into my being clean, I finally felt like I was actually clean.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was finally starting to heal. I was finally letting go of things. I was able to think about things in a different way. Like one small example, I still hadn't been able to walk into a Walmart because in my active addiction, I knew that I could go to Walmart and get a pack of needles for $1.23.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole like we would go get drugs, we'd go to Walmart, and then we'd go home. I still had not been able to walk into a Walmart because it triggered me so.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can go shopping again. It doesn't, like, I can walk into a Walmart and it doesn't phase me anymore. It was just little things like that I'm like, it was helping me think and see things in a whole different light that I didn't realize that I needed.
So you're talking about like psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I wanna just um, preface that, like,
Yes.
because I don't want people like um, self-medicating.
Oh yeah.
Does that make
No, I
sense?
mean,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
I did. It started out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, no, it's such a, it can be such a strong
Mm-hmm.
and amazing and such a powerful tool when used in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
When you come at it with reverence and um, gratitude, like it wasn't about getting high. It wasn't about, I was like, I'm here to do this session to figure out what is still hurting inside of me. And it changed my whole world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy to now see that it's really becoming more mainstream, that there's more places, here in St. George. I know there is in Salt Lake that
Mm-hmm.
these options are becoming more available because I know with my whole soul that, and so I microdosed and did those therapy sessions for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So until year 4 of my sobriety or being clean. And it it changed me. It
Mm-hmm.
helped. It just, the way it helped me process through a lot of that emotion is, I don't know that I could have ever done on my own to really dig up all that stuff. And so, with the help of therapy and, those guided meditations, those guided therapy sessions absolutely changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I say to anybody that will listen, like, if you are struggling, it's not for everybody, but look into it because
Mm-hmm.
it is an amazing tool that I don't think is utilized nearly as much as it should be, could be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of studies on it. In fact, there's the Psychedelic Society of Utah is working on. They work with legislators and they're working on studies and all type of. They're really diving into um, more peer-reviewed science on psychedelic assisted psychotherapy
Mhm.
and seeing
Yeah.
the importance of maybe looking at other modalities of treatment that this can be an effective treatment for addiction and for trauma.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, even being able to rebuild some of those brain pathways that are
Mm-hmm.
destroyed through active addiction,
Mm-hmm.
that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like that you can repair your brain, like that's huge. And maybe that was just because in my brain, I like my own personal, I was like, oh, I'm so broken. The drugs have broke me in such a way. And then to have somebody be like, no, you can repair yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe that was just in my own head, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was, it helped me to finally be like, you don't have to stay that broken person anymore. You can grow, which you don't have to do mushrooms to do that. You don't have to do those therapy sessions to do that. Nope. I have a sneeze.
Mm.
Dang cold.
Sinus stuff.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that has been, I mean, the gist of my story.
So how were you able to so so you worked on this. You go to Montana for a couple of years. You get clean. You're miserable. Because man, that what meth does to the dopamine receptors in the brain,
Oh,
it takes so long to heal those things and then at that point, I mean, meth has rewired your brain into thinking that you've got to have it to be able to feel any joy or to have any fun or enjoy anything.
uh-huh.
So, how were you able to rebuild your relationships?
It was slow.
Mm-hmm.
It was really slow. And honestly, like before I could even start to work on relationships with anybody else, I truly had to work on my relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in therapy when I was younger, even in rehab, like they would talk about that. And I was like, you're so full of crap. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does my relationship with myself have to do with my relationship with everybody else? But it is so absolutely vital. You cannot have a terrible relationship with yourself and be okay with other people. It just doesn't work. So for me, it started with um, spending a lot of time outdoors, which, Montana, that was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first start of COVID, so everybody, you couldn't be around people, and we had just endless amounts of outdoor. So it started with the love of just spending time outside, which translated here to St. George. When we came back, going on hikes in the desert and being outside and just learning to honor my own feelings, and it's okay to be upset. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not be able to pinpoint where those feelings are even coming from.
Mm-hmm.
What's not okay is to lash out at everybody around me because of those feelings, or to try and drown out those feelings, like hide those feelings. Like being able to accept that and knowing that, like, hey, this is the first step in moving forward. Being able to do that, then all of a sudden, like, my relationship with my mom hugely improved. My mom and I have not really gotten along ever. At the time, I was so mad. I'm like, oh, you just. And now I can look back and I'm like, well, no shit, Chanley. You were a disaster. Like, I didn't want to be loved. I did everything in my power to push anybody and everybody in my life away from me.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to, like, be able to stand being with myself in the quiet, that I was like, okay, then I could stand to be around other people. And it just snowballed from there. Like, it really took showing up for myself every day to prove to all the people closest to me that, like, okay, she really is changing. Because after 20 years of active addiction, I was really good at hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
I was really good at lying and making up stories and making it look like everything was okay when it was not. So it was a long, hard road to get people to see that, like, oh wait, she actually is improving.
Mm-hmm.
She is moving forward. She is telling the truth. Like, learning how to tell the truth, that was a big one.
Yeah. You spend 20 years in active addiction. You've built your entire life around protecting the addiction and the rage. You packed up and left rehab because somebody's like, "Let's work on your rage," and then you're like, "Fuck
Yeah.
you." Yeah.
Wow, like
Uh huh.
fingers in the air, like screw you.
Yeah.
Uh yeah,
Yeah. That takes
yeah.
a lot of work. How did you? I guess you got to that point where you said, "I have to give myself permission to heal."
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I finally was just like, once some of the other things, like, you know, um, started falling away, and I didn't feel sick all the time from music, because, like, there's just so much sickness in your body feeling like crap,
Mm-hmm.
especially after 20 years, that, like, once some of that started to subside, then I was able to focus on, like, other things. So then I was like, how else can I get rid of some of these nasty feelings inside of me?
Mm,
Because I'm just so tired of feeling like crap.
mm,
I just I just want to wake up and feel okay and not think about killing myself anymore.
mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I came close to trying a couple times. I had, like, they were definitely more for um the attention and to get me out of trouble, but I tried to hurt myself multiple times by taking handfuls of pills or whatever. But I was like, I would really love to wake up one day and not want to kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to be able to do that? Like, and finding somebody to talk to with therapy, which that's one of the things that nobody really talks about with therapy, is that finding somebody that you connect with is hard. probably not going to happen your first time out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have talked to dozens, dozens of therapists that just I didn't click with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found one that I did, and it was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just those little steps of like learning how to love myself and to know that I deserved more than the life that I told myself repeatedly all that I was worth or all that I deserved was a lie. Um, was finally was what yeah like hey like yeah that was hard. That's I'm still working on that. I have not perfected that because I had and just ingrained in my brain for so long that I didn't deserve love, that I didn't deserve anything because of the choices that I had made. And everybody deserves to be loved. Everybody deserves to be taken care of. Everybody deserves to feel safe in their own home. Um, and anybody out there that's still struggling with addiction, you do too. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it, yeah.
I think that was a really important message. Anybody who's out there struggling with addiction still, you deserve to be loved. That's such a hard thing to believe. When you have
Hmm.
those core beliefs and somebody comes along and they're so deeply ingrained and they create like this internal paradox for us where we want to be loved, but we don't feel like we deserve to be loved. And if somebody tries to point us in the direction of, like, look, here's why you deserve to be loved, because it's your basic human right to be loved, to live in a safe home, to receive kindness. That's just a
Hmm.
basic human right. That's bare minimum. And people have these core beliefs that say no, and then they look for all the ways that they deserve not to be loved, all the things about them that tell them that they're a horrible, rotten, no good person, and they just deserve to rot and not be cared for and not be worried about. And then somebody,
Hmm.
family comes, like mom comes along, right, and she says, okay, kid, uh, something's up and we gotta fix it. And, this is the way it's gotta be. And we're like, see, I know you didn't love me. I know
Hmm.
you don't care about me. It's everybody else. It's never been about me, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in addiction, it's all about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything.
Uh huh.
Every if I wasn't the center of attention, then it was, oh, you don't love me, which is just bonkers.
Mm.
But I was just so entrenched in my own little circle of hell,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all I could see, that I truly didn't understand that there was more to life than just what I was going through, or that anybody else was having issues. I just was like, I'm the only one that matters. Um, so when anybody challenged that, then I was like instantly, oh, you don't love me as much as you said like, or like when they would step back and like, Chanley, we can't, until you get clean, we can't talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, if you actually loved me, you'd be able to take me as I am, because this is just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's not who I was. Like, I remember telling my now husband when we were first dating all the time, I was like, listen, I do meth. You're never gonna change me. This is who I am. You either get on board or goodbye. And he had had 14 years clean time before he met me, or before we got together, and then he relapsed with me, and he'd tell me all the time, he's like, Chanley, you deserve more than this. I was like, no, I don't. Like, if you knew all the things I'd actually done, you'd know that I don't deserve to be loved. And I believed that. I truly believed that I was not worthy of any of that, anything, which is so far from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So what would you, if you had somebody in front of you right now whose child or sister or friend was struggling with addiction and they just didn't know what to do, what were the next steps to take, how to help this person, what would you say to them?
Well, for one, don't stop trying to get them help. Therapy. Get like if they're even willing to even consider it, just because at least for me and in my experiences, it's like, they say alcohol is the gateway drug. No, it's not. It's trauma. Trauma is the gateway into all of that, like all of that. So trying to help get them to figure out what that root cause is number one. Like, is that was huge. Um, but for me, like the biggest thing that really helped me like decide that I needed help or how bad it was being cut off, which is scary. I get for so many people like, oh, I can't tell them, I can't cut them off. I can't. But had my family kept um, with the codependency and still trying to take care of me, I would have just kept going. You cannot hit rock bottom if you've got somebody there that's still going to take care of you and pick up your mess. Letting me sit in jail, however awful it was for me at the time and how angry I was at the time, I look back and that was the catalyst of what made me finally see that I was how bad I really was. Had I been bailed out, I don't know that I would have. I mean, I probably would have sooner or later, but it took being like, no, like my sister, you will not see these kids again until you're clean. And again, I was so mad at her for a long time. But had she not said that, who knows where I'd be, if I'd even still be here. Um, Boundaries are your best friend, but also figuring out how to show that you still love them while setting boundaries. I guess that's my big like, which as an addict, I know we make it extremely difficult to like show love to, but continue to show them that you love them without letting them walk all over you. I think that's my would be my biggest thing. Like and it's there's no one recipe is gonna fix all. There's you know what I mean? Like if one way to show somebody that you love them and that you're not is gonna be different than what it was for me, but to find that line for you and yours, I truly believe that'll be what makes the biggest difference.
What would you say to somebody who is contemplating treatment or recovery in some fashion?
Oh, do it. Do it. It's not nearly as scary as you think it is. I look back now and I'm like, man, I thought we're going to rehab and I thought getting help was going to be the most terrifying thing in the world. It's not. It's not. It's hard and you do learn a lot about yourself, but it's not nearly as scary or hard as active addiction. That's what's hard. Like that's the hard thing. Like I look now, my worst days now, when I had a crap day, everything at work has gone wrong, you're just, even those sad emotional days are still leaps and bounds over my best day in active addiction. Like it feels really hard to get clean, but it's not, if that makes sense. Like staying where you are, staying in that active addiction is so much harder than the work to get clean. 1000%.
Takes a lot more diligence then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that getting clean is easy,
No,
right?
because it's not.
No,
It's
it's
not easy.
yeah.
But active addiction is so much harder. No. And I truly didn't get that until, well, years into being clean.
Mm-hmm.
I truly didn't get like how much harder it was to be high than it is to be clean.
So, what would you say were your most valuable resources during your time of when you were going through the early stages of recovery, and even now going through recovery, right?
Like,
Resources, support, things that people have said to you, or whatever support that they've provided for you.
um, I, well, for me, I mean, honestly, like my fam, which is weird because they're the hardest part and the best part.
Mm-hmm.
Their support is huge, but like AA meetings, like I am not super diligent about going to them, but the information that you learn there in meetings is so amazing. Um, and finding people that like my favorite thing to do at meetings is go find the people that have the most like long time sobriety and talking to them
Mm-hmm.
to see that there are so many people out there in your same position where you've been, you know what I mean? Like, yes, we all have different stories, but we're all in that same place.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that it can be done, because I know in my active addiction, I was like, no way that's real. No way people actually get clean. So to be able to go to meetings and see like people pick up their 10-year, 15-year, 20-year chip, that was huge because I was like, okay, if they can do it, so can I.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll be gosh darn, somebody's going to tell me that I can or cannot do something. And for me, I'm competitive. So to be able to see these people, I'm like, okay, if they can do this, so can I.
Yeah. Yeah. Still have that competitive streak,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But just, I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Um, I think my biggest thing for, everybody out there is you cannot, yes, going to meetings and hearing other people's story is amazing, but that doesn't mean it's going to be what works for you. Every single story is different. Every person has to find their own way and that it's worth it. Just keep trying every day to keep moving forward because life is so much better on this side.
Mm-hmm.
And find don't stop trying until you find what works for you because it's not going to just magically yellow brick road like this is the path, like it's not going to do that. You're going to
Yeah.
have to keep trying, but it's worth it and to just keep trying.
Yeah.
That would be
You're
mine.
gonna meet a wicked witch and lots of flying monkeys. As you saw, people calling you and saying, "Hey, I put something in your mailbox for you." So I haven't heard from you in a while. Wanted to make sure you're good. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
And truly that you cannot keep your same friends.
yeah.
You just can't.
Mm-hmm.
However sad or lonely that might look, once you finally let go of the things that are not meant for you, it will open up doors to people and places in your life that you're meant for.
Mm-hmm.
Once I finally let go of those friends, like some of the people that I've met since becoming clean are truly the most amazing souls. And I am so thankful for their presence in my life that had I held on to those old friends that I was like, well, I got clean. I want to help them get clean. Like, no, that has to be their journey. Like, you've got to let go of that stuff to make room for what's meant for you in
Mm-hmm.
your life.
Mm-hmm. So there's a grieving process too through all of it because you're grieving the life you knew, the friends you knew, and the life before, the life during, the life after, and the
Mhm.
substance too. The substance
Yeah,
too, because the substance definitely takes the place of primary connection, primary
yeah.
attachments. So I,
It feels really lonely and boring,
uh huh, yeah,
but it'll even out and then you find things that bring you joy in other ways and then And then you realize that that real connection is so much better than that fake connection that you had with the
Mm-hmm.
drug and with those people.
Yeah.
It just takes work.
Takes work, but it's worth
So
it. And here you are.
and
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah. That's amazing. I
So
appreciate you so much sharing your story. A lot of vulnerability there.
thanks.
Uh,
That
a
was
lot of,
hard.
yeah. No, I know, and I honor that. I don't take any of that lightly. So I appreciate you sharing that, being willing to share that. And like you said, for it to go out on the interwebs and for all the world to see. For
No, there are more things on the internet of myself that I should be concerned about. But I'm like, this is this is, if it can help even one person
hmm
to like know that they deserve more, that there is more, like 20 years of addiction, and I'm able to finally see the finally see that path. Like
hmm
it is worth it, and it's you can do it. We do recover.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. Great way to end it. So I'm going to stop the recording. Okay. Well, hang on a second before you